final session, which is on current events. And we're going to follow that by a wine and cheese reception. Before all of that, I want to, and I'll introduce you in just a moment to our final guest who's going to wrap up the current events. But first I want to ask you to take a moment, and I'd like to introduce you to the president of ASI, American Students for Israel. This group of students have been incredibly wonderful in helping us make today happen. They've run a session, they've made a lot of things happen today. And I'd like to present to you Ellie Levine, who's got just a couple of words to say.
Hello, thank you everybody for coming. I just wanted to introduce myself for a brief moment. I'm the president of American Students for Israel here at ICSB. We're just a student group that is dedicated to really making Israel's case on campus, and I like to think we do a pretty good job. We have our weekly meetings here at Hillel every Wednesday night, and we try to bring speakers and films and build coalitions and create allies really to Israel's cause here on campus. And we always like to have community members involved, and I really want to thank everybody for coming. We actually have a table with information outside right next to where the books are being sold, and if you'd like to get our weekly email, we can update you on what's going on campus with regards to Israel. Thanks again.
And now I'd like to introduce you to Captain Captain Avner Evan Zohar, who has come down from Monterey to be with us today to give us, standing on one foot, a brief summary of current events in Israel and the Middle East. Avner spent many years in the IDF before coming to America to complete his studies, and he currently works at an educational facility under the auspices of the Pentagon, chairing the Hebrew and Turkish language department at this facility up in Monterey. He speaks frequently as an Israel advocate, was down here, I think, last year, giving a talk with the title of "Please Forgive Us for Winning the Six-Day War." Without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Avner, following which we're going to have a brief Q&A on current events. And rather than ask Avner to be on the spot solely for your pointed questions, I'm going to, at that point, bring back up David Lewis and Rabbi Arthur Gross-Schaefer and Tuli Glassman. And you may field your toughest questions to any of them. They're fearless. Please welcome Captain Avner Evan Zohar.
Thank you so much. Whoa. So I have to start with a disclaimer. I'm required by federal law to tell you that it's pretty obvious, but I have to say it anyway. Despite the fact that I work for the U.S. Department of Defense, what I'm going to say this afternoon represents my own opinion and in no way the opinion of the Pentagon, the Bush administration, or the personal opinions of President George W. Bush. So I've said it, and now we can start. Okay, this lady, anybody recognizes her?
Yes.
Okay. She's now the most famous woman in Israel. Her name is Professor Yuli Tamir. She is the education minister, actually a very brilliant lady. She got her PhD from Oxford University. She worked with the philosopher Isaiah Berlin, became a politician. Now she's the education minister. And it's often the case that the focus in the United States or in the international arena and in Israel about current events is very different. Here people talk about the peace conference in Annapolis that maybe will take place next week. And in Israel, there's been a strike of educators, of teachers, starting from elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, and universities. It's been going on for over a month, and there's no end in sight. And I actually watched the Democratic presidential debate on Thursday night. Maybe some of you did it as well. And so many of the issues are very similar. People claim that Israel spends too much money on security, just like they claim that the United States spends too much money on the war in Iraq, and the people who suffer are people who need social services or public education. in this country. The teachers' unions are very strong in Israel as well, and Minister Tamir wants to reform the system. And the teachers said, well, the government has to give more funding to it. Teachers are the key to good education. But then, just like our governor here, Schwarzenegger, was trying to do with the teachers' union, teachers get tenured very easily in Israel. And as a result, we have some bad teachers, and the teachers' union are not necessarily willing to give up this privilege of having a tenure track so easily for teachers in the elementary school and the high schools. So she actually put her career on the line and said, I'm committed to this reform, and if this reform will not take place, then I will bear the consequences, meaning that she will resign. But so far, there's no end in sight, and when you talk to Israeli parents right now, this is the main concern. I'm sure many of you have kids, and you can just relate how fun it is to have your kids for a month at home without letting them go to school. So that's a big issue in Israel. Okay, here you can just see a demonstration again of teachers that was right in front of the Israeli Ministry for Foreign Affairs, and they say that education is the answer to Iran. Again, Iran being a big enemy of the State of Israel, and the teachers were saying if the State of Israel wants to win the conflict with Iran, education is the key to our success. Which brings us to the issue of Iran. This is a cartoon from Haaretz. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, the president of Iran, speaks at Columbia University, and he says, thanks you all, we invite you all to a ceremony of officiation, basically saying that, you know, Israel is making the point that the international community is not strong enough dealing with somebody who portrays himself as the new Hitler and committed himself without even having a nuclear weapon. He's already sincere and honest enough, you have to give him credit for that, for saying what he's going to do with this weapon, which is to destroy the State of Israel altogether. So, again, this is an Israeli perspective. Okay, just very quickly, the changing icons of Israel, the traditional falafel that we all like. Today, of course, we have kosher McDonald's in Israel, and some non-koshers as well. The traditional sandals of Israel, now we have Nike, and Naomi Shemer, who wrote Jerusalem of Gold right before the Six-Day War. She died a few years ago, and now the Israeli hip-hop band Hadag Nachash, that actually they came to Northern California, they were in San Francisco and Stanford University. And again, it's hip-hop about Israeli topics, it's in Hebrew, but again, it's strongly influenced by American culture. Okay, just few indications to show you that the Israeli economy is actually very strong. These are some statistics, I don't want to bore you with that, but that I took from the website of the Israeli Bureau of Statistics, and there are many, many more. If you Google it, you'll go there. So you can see that this is experts from Israel, according to commodity groups, and you see that there's manufacturing, diamonds, and agriculture. Agriculture is very small, and there's constant increase. So Israel exports more and more to the world. And then also Israel imports more and more to the world, and Israel has a trade deficit, but the trade deficit that Israel has is more or less stable from 2002 all the way up to 2006. So this is just one or two indicators that the Israeli economy is actually very strong. A lot of the credit goes to the former finance minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, but Benjamin Netanyahu, who is very popular in this country, got his MBA from MIT, is also a big capitalist, and then he definitely decreased government funding for social programs. As a result, the State of Israel that prided itself in the 50s and the 60s as being a very equal country, and then the gap between the rich and the poor in Israel was actually, Israel led the world with having a very small gap. Now Israel actually leads European nations. Israel is number 2 in the widest gap between rich and poor, even bigger than countries like Italy. And we all know that there's a big gap between the southern poor part of Italy and the northern part, even more than the United Kingdom with the monarchy. And then, so the reality of the economy in Israel is very different. Here you can see Michel Kishka, he's a cartoonist. He portrays here kind of a new Novorish mall in Haifa. And again, people just like in the United States with their cell phones, they go out with their kids. They sit in cafes, it's very nice. But we have homeless people now in Israel, and traditionally, maybe when some of you visited Israel in the 50s and the 60s, Israel didn't have this problem of homelessness. And now, even when you land in Israel, and it doesn't matter if you drive down to Tel Aviv or drive up to Jerusalem, it's kind of like in LA or in San Francisco when you enter Highway 101, and you have all those homeless people ask for money. It's the same now in Israel. Traditionally, we didn't have that. Okay, again, that's a Rosh Hashanah card from the time right after the Six-Day War, and you see here a picture of the Chief of Staff, Yitzhak Rabin. I thought about it just because I wanted to show you a picture of Rabin just after the Six-Day War, but to talk a little bit about the division within Israeli society. Recently there was a soccer match between two groups from Jerusalem and from Haifa. It was in Haifa, and then when people were required to stand silent for 1 minute to commemorate the assassination of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, so many of the Jerusalem people who came there actually disturbed and refused to stand up. It actually captured a lot of attention by the media in Israel, just to show that there's a lot of division within Israeli society. Okay, the elections in the US actually take a lot of interest by Israeli public. This is from Haaretz, and what they do actually, you can go and look because they update it on a weekly basis, but they give grades to each US candidate. So Rudy Giuliani got 875, and then right after we have Hillary Clinton, which got the grade of an 8, and then Michael Bloomberg. I'll actually show you the whole thing just from this week, but of course you can go and see it yourself. John McCain, 7.3, Bill Richardson, 6.8, Fred Thompson, 6.8, Mike Huckabee, 6.75, Mitt Romney, 6.5, and then Joseph Biden, 6. It's actually surprising to see Barack Obama, who got 5.25. When I looked and so why was his grade so low, is because he visited Israel relatively late, only in January 2006, and then a group of Israeli diplomats and academics, they rate them. They said that maybe his commitment to Israel is not as strong as the commitment of the other candidates, but you can actually follow it yourself. It's on haaretz.com. Okay, what's this building? No, that's the Supreme Court of Israel, and actually right behind it, you see the laser pointer here. Right behind it, this is the Knesset, and the Prime Minister's office is down the hill, so the Prime Minister actually has to go up, literally, to go to the Supreme Court or to the Parliament. The Israeli Supreme Court, actually, why don't we look at it here in a sense, like, this is our Chief Justice, Dorit Beinish, who doesn't get a lot of media attention in Israel or in the United States. However, obviously, she's a very brilliant professor who was appointed to the Supreme Court in 1995, and then in Israel there's a mandatory retirement age for the Supreme Court, so Justice Barak, who used to be the Chief Justice, was forced to retire last year, and then she was appointed to be the Chief Justice, the first woman in Israel who holds this position. And usually when I talk to non-Jewish groups, I just tell them that Israel has a neighboring country, Saudi Arabia, and in Saudi Arabia women are not allowed to drive, as to drive a car. It can be in a car, but they cannot drive a car. And in Israel, apparently, they drive all the way up to the Supreme Court. So, Justice Beinish actually wants to preserve the power of the Supreme Court. Many people believe that the Supreme Court is the last fortress of democracy in Israel because it wasn't corrupt by politicians. And then she, that's her vision. She's a strong feminist, and she definitely supports human rights and minority rights. And she got into a big conflict with another professor, Daniel Friedman, who is the Justice Minister. And I think he is under the impression that he is the boss, the supervisor of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And Justice Beinish had to show him that no, she represents the people, and she's not going to get orders from him. So Ehud Olmert, the Prime Minister, appointed Mr. Friedman, Professor Friedman, to be to be the justice minister, and his vision is that the Supreme Court in Israel is too strong, and he wants the Knesset to pass some laws that would actually limit the power of the Supreme Court. The former Chief Justice that we had, Aaron Barak, he came up with this Hebrew phrase, Hakol Shafit, everything is under the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court in Israel. The Supreme Court in Israel is different. It's also the High Court of Justice. It's different in this country because it's very easy for people to get to the Supreme Court. They can just go to a post office in Israel, they file a form, and then it gets to the Supreme Court. Whatever they file could be immediately dismissed by the Supreme Court, but it will be dismissed by a Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. So it's different because in this country, in the US, the Supreme Court can pick and choose cases they don't want to deal with. In Israel, they don't have this privilege. So, and that creates a lot of problems for the government, and that's why he wanted to kind of build a detour around the Supreme Court in Israel, and Dorit Beinish was definitely not going to give up.
How many justices are there?
12.
In Israel?
Yes. Yes. Here you can see Prime Minister Olmert talking to Ehud Barak. That's actually from last week, before Prime Minister Olmert invited Ehud Barak, the defense minister, to join him for Annapolis. And they make fun of both of them that Barak is asking him, so how is Annapolis going on? And the Prime Minister tells him, like the big operation, the big military operation in the Gaza Strip that you're working in, meaning both projects are not going anywhere because there's constant Qassam rockets attack from the Gaza Strip to Sderot, which is an Israeli community right next to the border with Gaza. And for a while they've been talking about a big military operation. But the Israeli army understands that, just like the American forces in Baghdad and in Basra and Iraq, to get into a heavily populated area like the Gaza Strip is going to be disastrous in the effect on the local population and casualties of Israeli soldiers. So far, there has been no big military operation in the Gaza Strip, and also there wasn't much progress on the conference in Annapolis. Okay, in Annapolis, basically, since Israel gave back the Gaza Strip, so these are some of the things that will be discussed. These are the Israeli settlements in the West Bank, because there are no more Israeli settlements in the Gaza Strip. So what you see here in the yellow are blocks of settlements all over, and then just regular settlements that, again, a lot of them are in the Jordan Valley right here. These are some things that will be discussed in Annapolis. Okay, this is again a little bit about the fragile political situation of Prime Minister Olmert. This is actually, let me see, this was from, I think, yeah, it's actually from July, but that Olmert tops the corruption list, and then his Minister for Foreign Affairs, Tzipi Livni, she's actually considered by many in Israel as a very honest politician. She had her chance to impeach the Prime Minister, to have a little political coup, but she refused to do it. And then she has been loyal to Prime Minister Olmert, but many talk about her. She's again from the Kadima party, and she could be the next Prime Minister of Israel and the second female Prime Minister after Golda Meir. So again, he seems to be a very corrupt politician. There's one story after another about things that he did when he was the mayor of Jerusalem, when he was the Ministry of Trade, and then the National Bank in Israel was sold to private investors, and he just made sure that, allegedly, that his friends got the highest bid and they got to own the bank, while she has the image of a very clean politician. Okay. In November, this month, we're supposed to have the Gay Pride Parade in Jerusalem. It takes place every year, and then there is obviously a strong opposition, not just from Jewish ultra-Orthodox group, but also from Muslim group and Christian groups. Actually, even they have seen the irony. There was a press conference a year ago, and then Muslim clergy, Christian clergy, and Jewish ultra-Orthodox rabbis got together there and actually called the Pope and the Israeli government to stop the Gay Pride Parade in Jerusalem. And even they understood the irony of it, and they said that they usually don't agree on anything else, but the only thing that they can agree on is that there shouldn't be a gay pride parade in Jerusalem. But the Jerusalem Open House, which is the Gay and Lesbian Community Center in Jerusalem, and unfortunately the only community center in the world that actually caters to, the only Gay and Lesbian Community Center in the world that caters to an Arabic population in the West Bank. They have a website, the only website in the world, Gay and Lesbian website in Arabic, and they have a whole coordinator who deals with the West Bank. When they put together this postcard, you can see the Gay Pride Parade in Jerusalem in 2005 and 2006, and they're marching right in front of the house of the chief rabbinate in Israel. It's actually a walking distance from King David Hotel, for those of you who know a little bit about Jerusalem. So I'll let you read it. So when I went to school in Texas, so many people would ask me, what's so special about Israel? And I think one of the reasons that people are so attracted to Israel as a country is because it's fresh, it's new. Even though it's going to be 60 years old, as some of the speakers here this morning were saying, that Israel still doesn't have a written constitution. So that means that our generation may be the one that will write the constitution for Israel. And that's a pretty unique phenomenon in world history and in world democracy that, for example, in this country, we don't have any of the founding fathers alive who put together the US Constitution, while in Israel, it's basically up to our generation to still form the country. So the society is still putting itself together, it's still gelling around, and then this is something that is very exciting. That's why I think people feel very strongly and connect to Israel religiously, but also from that perspective as well. Thank you so much. That's the last one.
I'm going to pull up a couple more chairs and invite Rabbi Arthur Schaefer and David Lewis and Tuli Glassman to join Arthur, and invite you all if you have any questions before we return to the wine and cheese. Gary.
Peter, can I ask the captain, do you think Netanyahu has a chance of becoming the future prime minister again?
Yes, certainly. Netanyahu has proven himself to be a very shrewd politician, and it seems like he has learned. People criticized him the first term when he was prime minister, that he would get panic under pressure. So when he thought that his rivals from the Likud were about to tell the nation that he was cheating on his wife constantly, may I add, he ran into the TV studios and just had a press conference with people. And then I think he has learned the lesson that, like how to operate as a leader. So in a sense, he redeemed himself when he was a finance minister. And that's what people are saying Ehud Barak is trying to do right now. People were utterly disappointed when Ehud Barak, when he was a prime minister. Now he's a defense minister, and people are saying he's doing the same thing that Netanyahu is doing. He's revalidating himself by being not a prime minister, by having a top other position.
Isn't there a financial corruption though following him?
Barak?
No.
No, he cleaned himself totally. Oh, yeah.
Do you think it's likely that Israeli politics are going to go back to liberty food and Kadima is going to die away?
That's an excellent question, and I don't have a clear answer. The establishment of Kadima was something that many people thought was unthinkable in Israeli politics, because we had a two political system, kind of like we have it in this country. So, but people say, yeah, Kadima has no ideological skeleton, they have no meaning, but so far, again, Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, that everybody predicted that he would quit after the war in Lebanon right away, and he would become just an anecdote in history. Again, he's proven himself to be a very shrewd politician, a survivor, so it's very hard to predict.
This is for everybody. How do you think Israel needs to explain itself to the world? I don't like to hear from everyone.
Love.
No, what is Israel's answer? What do you think?
Improve.
Gee, such a simple question.
I don't understand the question. Could you clarify?
I guess the question is what can Israel do to improve its image in the world? Is that
Yes.
fair?
Why does it have to prove anything?
You know, communicate the things that go well better and change some policies.
Excuse me, maybe show more compassion to the Arabs, because the PR is so contrary. And I'm from Israel, and when I see the news, it breaks my heart, because in a way I feel like Israel is responsible, although we're not, I know that, but maybe there has to be some communication about how those conditions can be changed. And those conditions have to come from within the settlements of themselves. I mean, we're not responsible for that.
If we look just very quickly, go back to the Lebanese war, so a year ago, right? The very first, if you look at the PR people that were put on, at least CNN and others, they were not that articulate. They didn't explain why Israel was doing what it was doing. Because Israel's policy was obviously generally no comment on certain things. It did not, it had the world stage and they did not use it. There's actually there's been a lot of attempts to try and get people who know marketing and branding to work with the Israeli consulate. We've even had some some people who left Israel who are now in the major marketing positions who went to the consulate and the embassy said, let us help you. And the response was, because we don't live in Israel, but we love Israel, let us help you. And the response was, well, we can't control you. And part of it is that's a real mistake. So I don't think they've done a very good job. And I think you're right. If Israel would show some kind of more compassion, but also explain itself, I think we do a lot better. And that's not been their policy. And so a few of us, actually, go to Israel, we say, you have a lot of Americans from the Israeli army of things. Use them. I think there's a need here for that to happen, and we haven't done a very good job. Now, Bibi is the best that Israel has at this point, and that's why, I'm sorry, maybe there's others, but Bibi at least has been good at it. He's better than others.
Well, in terms of explaining.
Yeah. Okay, I'd say for Russia, I'm sure.
Yeah, I have, first of all, I think that even today when I saw the presentation about Ethiopian Jews, one of the Ethiopian Jews, she was working for the IBA, the Israeli Broadcast Authority, but she was the janitor there. And I think to myself that if I were the Israeli Minister for Foreign Affairs, I would just say that all the new cadets for the Israeli Foreign Service, they have to be Ethiopians. That's how you start, you know, you have to say, well, if they blame that Israel is a racist state, well then we're just going to bring the Ethiopians. I want to see the Consul General of Israel in San Francisco, in LA, to be an Ethiopian Jew. We have to start there. The actually Deputy Consul General in San Francisco is a Bedouin, Ismail Khaldi, a wonderful, wonderful guy. And then
the guy in Atlanta is a Druze. The Consul General in Atlanta is a Druze.
And that's what we need. We need, because they say Israel is a racist state. Well, here we have a Bedouin representing the state of Israel. What do you think about that? And I wish it would be my idea, but it was actually Nathan Sharansky who said, I mean, I cannot take the credit for it, but Nathan Sharansky always said, you guys want to talk about human rights? Let's talk about human rights, you know. I fought for human rights for years. I dedicated my life to that. You know, I was a Soviet dissident. They named the alley, one of the stairs to the UN after him. So he was like, okay, let's talk about human rights. Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. You want to have human rights like they have it in Syria or in Lebanon or in Yemen. That's your model of human rights. Israel has tremendous problems, but it's still a role model. It's a beacon of light, a light to the nation. If we talk about human rights and about democracy, every democracy has problems. You know, Guantanamo Bay is definitely not as good, you know, in line of the U.S. Constitution. Nonetheless, the United States is a democracy. So we really need to focus on that, and then really present. That's why always when I go and talk, I talk about women's rights in Israel. I talk about the gay and lesbian community in Israel. That's the only way that we can really explain it to a Western audience, to a democratic audience.
Excuse me, I hate to be cynical, but does anybody know how much money the Arab countries invest in PR in this country? Because all the things you are saying are wonderful, and we all know it. If it doesn't get anywhere, it's because maybe we're not investing, or we cannot invest as much as the Arab countries in PR.
The Saudis post 9/11 invested huge amounts in Washington lobbyists and PR.
And they keep on doing it.
Yeah, but one of the problems is that powerful images, no matter how much of an investment you make in things, powerful images are still powerful images. And you can invest a lot, but then one kid gets caught in a crossfire in Gaza, and we've seen that image of that child trying to be protected by his father. One image like that, it doesn't matter how much you invest in PR and branding.
No, but these images are carried by Arab Al Jazeera, and we don't have in Israel a similar station that would carry another type of counter effect.
It's a common belief that if the Palestinians could have their own country, then somehow there would be peace in the Middle East. I was wondering, do you feel that this is a myth? Maybe we could start with Hezbollah and David.
I think that historical anger and hatred of Jews and of Israelis will go on forever, but I think if you can create, look, Ariel Sharon wanted a Palestinian state. Okay, this is something that needs to happen for the safety of Israel and for the safety of Jewish people. Yes, will it solve everything? No. But will it remove one of the huge sources of anger? Yeah, anger will still go on, but there's a reason why Ariel Sharon wanted a Palestinian state.
And also, as ideally, not only do you have to have the state, you also have infrastructure, joint economic projects, so there will be problems for a very, very long time. But the more that you have a state, you have people have a reason that they want to have their own state, you start to make Gaza green, all those things that hopefully will happen will change. It's not some of the realities. But it will not be, as I said before, not be like California and Oregon. There will be major tensions, there will be problems, there will be killings. But it will be this tension, and then there will be hope. And that will take a long time to really happen, but I think that's where we have to go.
I just want to say that I respectfully disagree, because that's what I used to say 2 years ago. And then again, Ariel Sharon, one of the things that he said is that I'm going to get Israel out of the Gaza Strip. His whole disengagement plan, which I really supported. And then I even thought to myself that maybe the Arab world would say, Saudi Arabia would say, well, education in the Gaza Strip, on us. We're going to put $1 billion just to build school. And then the Emirates would say, well, healthcare, on us, welfare, Kuwait will take care. Nothing. What did we get in return? Hamastan. We have like a whole Hamas government there. They constantly shoot Qassam rockets. My brother lives in Sderot, and after a while I told him, you know what? Maybe you shouldn't be living there anymore, because obviously the Israeli government cannot protect this community against the Qassam rockets. So I was thinking to myself, well, now we're going to give them back the West Bank so they can shoot on Tel Aviv and on Ben Gurion International Airport. I wish we would really deal with a democratic society where people are being elected, and then they can, they promise things to the people, and people vote for them. No, we deal with very different society. That when President Bush pushed for elections, then we got Hamas, and I don't see much future. So I don't feel comfortable now to give them back the West Bank. No, I have a problem with that.
Before I go on your video, we'll get to you next. I want to toss out a question for you following up on that, which is, I'm sure we've all heard American Jews talk about what happened after withdrawal from Gaza and say, look, we gave them what we want, we left, they destroyed the greenhouses we left for them. Look, we can't see, we can't. Now, what I'm going to ask you though is, anybody who can feel this, what is a more complex answer here? What if you will even, what is it that fuels the Palestinian answer, which is, this was a unilateral pullout and it was unsatisfactory because it was a refusal to have dialogue. I'm asking the question because I want this room to know more about the complexities of this issue rather than the simple answer.
I don't have a simple answer, and I don't have an immediate solution to the problem, but I just know that for years that's what we people in the Israeli left, that's what we believed in, that Israel will get out of the territories, and this is the cause of the problem. And what I'm disappointed to see, and again I give tremendous credit to the President of Iran for being so honest and saying what I think that so many other people in the Arab world think, but they don't say it as clearly as he does. There's huge segments of the Arab population around the world that sees the problem with the occupation, but not the 1967 occupation, but the 1948 occupation. Because the PLO, was established in 1964 to fight occupation. What occupation was around in 1964? The existence of the State of Israel for itself was this occupation. And that's the sentiment that I get from the Arab world. Frankly, that's a sentiment that I get from US colleges as well. You know, when you go to UC Berkeley and even here, when I spoke last time here, people strongly believe that the State of Israel has no right to exist, and yet that's a problem for them. I agree. So I don't have easy solutions. Yeah, I think Israel should definitely pull out of the West Bank, but not in a way that will endanger the existence of the Jewish state.
So I was also there and helped to support pull out of Gaza. My car had the right colors and everything else to say we need to be out of Gaza. And it was probably the whole debate. Even I spent time even in Gaza. And all of us were very upset with what happens. Because we presumed there'd be a much more positive response. Part of it, though, I think, was the election of Hamas, which was forced upon them by the U.S. in that way to say. I think the way that was done in a fashion, we're going to do what we want to do. Also, as you mentioned, is a major problem. And I think, but the alternative is much worse. You cannot stay in this static stat. And if you don't make some changes, then the war, the constant attacks will only continue. So I think there has to be some risks. And I think that Gaza is very different from the West Bank. At least that's what I said. So I said Minneapolis, if it goes right, it will be a first step. It has to be many steps. It has to be a negotiating process, not what happens after. So I'm pessimistic and optimistic. We have to move forward.
So it would be unfortunate to conclude from what happened in Gaza that therefore pullouts, withdrawals are untenable. Right.
I don't think so.
As promised.
Thank you. From reading Arab newspapers online, like Al Jazeera, it seems that the Muslim position is not against the so-called occupation of the West Bank or Gaza, but that the Jews, it's not even Israel, it's the Jews that they talk about. So my personal opinion is that no amount of relinquishing territory or land will satisfy the problem, because that isn't the problem. So if we're trying to say, like you were saying, Rabbi, we have to do something, I don't think that that's at all what they're looking for. I think they'd like to get closer to us, and what they'd like to do is destroy the Jews, which they're not at all ashamed to say online in English, and it's accessible to anyone who wants to look.
I think, yeah?
Yes, of course.
You're going from right to left. I think we preoccupy ourselves too much with the Prime Minister's wrong move instead of with the Prime Minister's good intentions. We've never had one like that. I don't know him very well personally. I had no opportunity to ever meet him. Very few had.
Julie, can you speak up a little bit?
Yeah, he grew up in a rural area. He was just happened to have been born to a famous politician as a father. But you know, in contrast to previous prime ministers,
You're good.
Most of whom were generals. The way Arabs and others view them is what they are, generals. Eisenhower is an exception. once he became president. But he was elected because he was a general. Even Ben-Gurion was extremely aggressive in his attitudes before the 80s, which became much milder in '67, when a couple of generals came to him and said, what are we going to do with the land we conquered? He said, give it all out, right now. Olmert is a very, very smart lawyer. Olmert, sure, he wants to survive in his position. Why shouldn't he want that? Do you think it's easy to be Sharon's deputy prime minister? Sure, he had some luck too. But to maneuver between Avigdor Lieberman and the left, the article that Shulamit Aloni wrote the other day, it's not easy. He used to say 2 Jews, 3 opinions, 1 prime minister, 10 opinions. So we need to concentrate on what he's able to do, rather than what's wrong with him. Let the Israeli courts and hungry journalists worry about the other stuff. I think, even though I never voted for him, and I probably will never do, and even though I'm violating my own principles of talking about he's currently the best we have. He's got the best defense minister we have. He's got the best foreign minister we have. And maybe, despite the fights with the Supreme Court, he may have the best justice minister.
Other questions? Ricky?
I've been dismayed this recent visit and the time before with the number of conversations that I've had with reasonable, intelligent people, including members of my family and friends, in blaming the Jewish neocons in Washington for the Iraq War and for, God forbid, the upcoming Iran war, and saying that they did it all in Israel's interest. And can anybody up there suggest a good way to talk back to what I think is a canard?
And this is going to have to be a quick last answer because I've just been informed that we are truly out of time. So if somebody can respond.
Right. I got nothing on this one.
Can I make an answer to that? From what I understand,
I'd prefer if one of the rabbis Go ahead.
From what I understand, I don't know if it was Sharon or Israel's intelligence, they came to Bush before the Iraq war and pleaded with him not to go into Iraq. Israel said, we're not afraid of Iraq. Iraq is no problem for us. Iran is a problem. And from what I understand, Israel intelligence warned Bush against going into Iraq. I may be wrong, but that's what
But we're not sure what Bush dressed. But actually that, as I mentioned before this morning, we're finding more and more that there's all sorts of issues about AIPAC being so strong, that AIPAC is trying to control policies and so forth. Is this a broader question? And that often we respond with silence. So just a real quick answer. We can't just do, there's no silver bullet. On the college campuses, for instance, we don't have a good presence. A lot of our programs, all our money as a Jewish community was spent on creating Holocaust studies, and a lot of us now feel that's been a mistake actually. And we need to create actually Jewish studies, Israeli studies, to try to have that type of statement. That we need people like Prince and Barbara, thank God we have Peter, we have Russia and others, and Ryan, who respond to letters in the newspaper. So we need people who say, no, that's not what happened. Because otherwise what's going to happen, or what has been happening, is that the Jewish community is being perceived as only caring about Israel, not caring about U.S. interests. And therefore everything is put in that framework. We need a much stronger response, a reasoned response, and a stronger response across the board. So that's something that we have a large way to respond. But it is a concern. I'm very, very worried. But the nice thing here is at UCSB we have a Jewish chair about to be developed. Like over I teach, now we're going to have a Jewish studies program and a Jewish studies chair. So there are some responses we're doing on college campuses. But what Peter's doing here, what the committee did with Peter and Gail to do this is so unusual. But it's now being modeled other places. So I think the answer is honestly what we're doing here. The response, education, commitment to respond. But I think this is our response, our best response.
Thank you, Arthur. I'm now going to continue our first rabbi and then invite you into one issue.
I just want to say one last thing. Again, in addition to thanking you all for being here and participating and showing how many people are here and are caring about this issue, to thank our incredible speakers for doing an extraordinary job in enlightening this. Peter Melnick has been really the brainchild of this Israel teaching from last year to this year. It started with one person to make this all happen. Gail and I can't even name everybody on the committee have joined in, but and they've just been an amazing group that I kind of tagged in at the last part of it. But one thing that was really inspiring for me today, and I want to pass it on to you, is that Peter and Lainey's son and daughter were both here today. Daniel Melnick led one of the sessions with ASI. And one of the reasons why I'm sharing this right now, aside to embarrass you a little bit, but is to show the issue of passing down this and trust me, they are on very different sides of the political spectrum, I know. But to say that this love of Israel can't be passed down from parent to child, and then I look at our students here, many of our students come and don't get this from our parents, and that it's also your opportunity and our opportunity to teach our parents, and that part of this whole thing about Israel teaching Jews about how to care for Israel is about passing it down. One person's passion made this all happen and inspired and made it all. So I hope that each one of us can leave today with that feeling of knowing that each one of us as an individual can make a difference by sharing our passion and our commitment to Israel with others. Thank you all so much for coming.